Hey there, it's Mark from Alchemist Camp, where we learn Elixir by building things. And today we're going to continue building the Alchemist.camp site itself, and that's going to involve cloning just a little bit of what Plug does, and we're going to use it the same way Phoenix does. We're going to use it to update things in our request. Actually, to be specific, we're going to update the response code, because right now the response code, if you look at a good route, the response code is, let me go to the browser tools here. You can open those with Control-Shift-K in Firefox or Control-Shift-J in Chrome. I reload it here and you can see a 200 get. 200 means everything was okay, so that's what the response should be. Problem is, if I put in something that doesn't exist, I still get a response code 200, and that's because our page handler just dishes off whatever request comes in with a 200 to the router, and the router does nothing to change the response. Based on the path, I should say it does nothing to change the code. Based on the path, it'll send a different body, but we need to actually change the code itself. And to help us do that, we'll clone just a little bit of Plug, but we're not going to call it that because we're on a campsite, so we'll call it Glue. Glue is the name of the folder, and then we'll add a conn.ex file. Plug.Conn has a lot of functionality in it. There are a lot of things it does, and for our purposes, the main thing to understand is that it has a lot of functions in it that take in an object, or they take in a struct called the conn, and they also return a conn. And the conn that it returns is usually very close to the struct that the function took in. It's just got some additional data, or some data in it was modified. And the way this plays out is your web server will get a request, and as it's building a response, this conn will get built up with more and more and more information, and then eventually rendered into a response. We're just going to make the bare necessities here. Glue.Conn, and we need a struct. We absolutely need a rec path. Has no default. Response header. Defaults to content type text HTML, then a response body, and defaults to an empty string, and then a status. 200 means everything's okay. That's what our app is returning for everything right now. Then we'll add a function to put the response body. Takes a conn in the first argument, and a body, and it returns that same conn except the response body field is now replaced with the body that was passed into the function. Then put status, basically the same thing. And that's all we need for now. I'm going to full screen this here. Next, we want to go to our page handler. Now we need to make the page handler use a conn. So we'll start by getting the path from cowboy rec at the very top of our handler. We don't need this headers line anymore because the conn has the headers. We'll make a variable called conn that we're going to initialize with the module struct from Glue.Conn, rec path. So instead of a default path, we're going to use whatever we just got from Cowboy. Then we're going to call the router with the conn and assign the result back into the conn variable. Now we're going to break this into multiple lines, since it's going to take up more space to use meaningful names than these hard-coded values. So rec is going to stay the same, no change there. Router call, we already called the router, so instead of this here, we're going to replace it with the body from the conn. So conn.resp body, and the headers are just going to be conn.resp header. I believe it's singular, let me make sure. Resp header. And then 200 is going to be conn.status. Let's go on to the router. In our router, we need to import Glue.Conn. Then in the call, we've got to change the path with the conn. And content 4 is going to be using conn.rec path to get the same path we had. And I'm going to pass the conn to it so it can use it. All of these need to use the conn. So we'll pass it in, and in the bodies of each of these functions we need to use put resp body function into the conn, and the first argument has to be conn, and close the strings, although this one is not right because that's using S sigil multi-line string. Okay, save that. There is one really important thing left though, and that is we've got to set the status when something can't be found. So right now it's just using the same status as everything else. So we'll pull the conn out in front and then just make a pipeline, and we'll put status 404. 404 is the not found status. So now we get a conn. It goes into this put status function, which returns a conn, which goes into the put rest body function, which returns another conn that has the body. All right, let's check out the server, see if it does what we want it to do now. All right, we'll reload, and now it's a 404 status. This was a bit of work to do one small thing. However, we have made our site more modular, and with our Glue.Conn, we can now start chaining things much like Plug.Conn could have, and it'll simplify future development. And I will just deploy to the server here with nanobox deploy. Success. And it usually takes a minute or two after that's done before it goes to the actual server, but we'll check it out anyway. That's it for this video. If you've learned much or enjoyed it, then you are very welcome. And until next time, code on.